everyone, it's Margaret Wallace Duffy from Wallace for Wellness, and it's a pleasure to be sitting down again with Rosemary Munro of Journey to a New Life Counseling. Now, as an addiction counselor, she sees a lot and has had a passion for this work for over 25 years. So we're going to be speaking to her today about a very important topic, the topic of intervention. Now, this is a very difficult time for families, and there is a process, so we're thrilled to have you with us to talk about that.
Thank you, Margaret. It's good to be here.
So when we talk about addiction and family members or a loved one, what does intervention mean? What is an intervention?
Well, basically, it's about a way, to coach a family on how to help someone that doesn't want help.
Right.
And we do that by presenting them with the reality of their using behavior in a caring, loving way. It paints a picture for them of what they're like and the impact that that's having on each of the family members. Because with addiction in a family, what happens is, nobody talks about it. It's like having the elephant in the living room. Everybody walks around it and pretends it's not there.
Right, right. Now, so the goal of an intervention isn't just for the addict, is it? It's a very much bigger picture than that.
You're right. The goal is twofold. First, of course, the family's goal is to get the person to accept help and go to treatment. But equally important, this process is for the family.
Right. To
help them on their healing journey.
Right, exactly. And of course, the family has enabling behaviors, and we're going to get into that in a moment, because intervention is a whole process. It's not just something that happens one day and you go in ill-prepared. It's so important to do this right. Can you speak to the intervention process and what a family can expect?
Right. It takes usually, 6 to 8 or 9 hours, depending on the size of the group, to prepare a family for this process. Mm-hmm. And so what we do, we begin with helping the family to understand the nature of addiction. Because family members inevitably, especially parents, have guilt. If we'd done this or if we hadn't done that, maybe she would have been all right. And so they continually agonize over, how come, she's like this. Other siblings are fine, but, her life's out of control. So I begin by educating them that addiction is a brain disease. And what I mean by that, Margaret, is that someone who is dependent on alcohol or drugs has a brain that's wired differently. They metabolize alcohol and drugs differently, sets up the compulsion to continue to drink and use. And, that's, that's the physiological piece to addiction. And that's not something anybody can change or that they're responsible for. Right. So it's a great relief to families to say, that's why.
Yes, exactly, because there's a lot of shame that is cloaked over families, the addict and their entire family. And so having that physiological piece to hold on to validate that it's not just about willpower. That's not,
absolutely.
That's not the case.
It's nothing to do with intelligence. It's not a moral issue. It's not about willpower.
Absolutely. So now, if you're sitting down and speaking to the family, how do you help them prepare for this process? What takes place?
Well, after we get through the educational piece, then we move forward with, preparing for the day.
Right.
And we do that by having them prepare a little script, because this is a very intense emotional process, as you can imagine. And so then I edit that. We go over it to make sure that there's no judgment, no blaming, no guilting, just that they're painting a picture of the addict's behavior and the impact that it's having on them. And, for many people, that's a very important part of the process.
And I would imagine that's also linked to the success when we speak to interventions and the success. Is that correct?
It is, because what happens, as I explained to family members, even although the addict usually has a lot of bravado and is very seldom honest about how he's feeling about his drinking or using, what happens is, because of the shame that, he's feeling, then, he doesn't feel worthy of his family's love. And in reality, they're probably not being very loving, after
not
years
very lovable.
of this. Yes.
Yeah, when you're living with that.
He's hard to love.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when they come to that realization that the intervention is the ultimate act of love, and that's what breaks through that wall of defenses that the person has around them and allows them then to be in a place of accepting help.
Right. Now, this type of process for a family is, as you mentioned, very intensely emotional and very, very difficult. So it's so important that they feel they have somebody like yourself that they can connect to and relate to. Clearly, you have a passion for this work, and I can totally see why a family would need your help and how it would be so important to have you in their corner.
That's true, Margaret, and I am passionate about it, and part of the reason for that is that I'm a recovered addict alcoholic myself. I'm 36 years in recovery now, so I know it from both sides, and I think that's really helpful for families and the person with the problem.
For sure, and it also speaks to the fact that, look at you, you're a picture of health and you're helping others, so there's light at the end of the tunnel, because I'm sure for not just the addict but these families, it doesn't feel that way when you're right in it.
Well, that's true, and the good news about addiction is that it's 100% treatable.
So when we talk about the intervention, how do you prepare them for that actual day?
Well, we begin by having them talk about their relationship with the person with the problem, and I have them prepare a script. And of course we edit that, and the purpose of the script is just to paint a picture for the person about their using behavior, giving specific data, information, and how it made them feel.
Right.
And then, of course, closing by asking them to get the help that's been arranged for them, because we do arrange for treatment so that the person goes right from the intervention to a treatment center.
And what about the success rate with respect to interventions and treatment?
The success rate for intervention is actually 90%.
Really? It's very high.
90% of the time, the person leaves the intervention and goes to treatment that day.
Now, for those poor families and addicts, that 10% that don't go get help, this is not a lost process regardless, is it?
It is not, because the family now have some tools. They've learned about their enabling behaviors, because it's enabling behaviors that keeps this cycle going.
Right.
And so now they can be free of the guilt and shame and remorse, and also learn to set some boundaries and change their relationship with that person.
Yeah, some healthy detachment, and as you mentioned, enabling behaviors that a family does. And it's out of love. I mean, Absolutely. It is out of love and trying to get them help, but recognizing how you're contributing to this disease, creating a healthy detachment, and therefore you can live a healthier life, and hopefully at some point the addict will get help too.
And they often do, because when the family begins to change and stops rescuing, covering up, all of those old behaviors, then the person is left to face themselves, and very often they have their moment of truth.
Right, and let's, your work is so powerful. Thank you so much for the gift you bring to so many families, because there are not a lot of people like you across Canada, so you're a real treasure.
Thank you, Margaret.